Now, with the war in Ukraine dragging on and Washington sending mixed signals about NATO commitments, Germany seems to be scrambling to secure its future. Now, once fully reliant on the American nuclear umbrella, Berlin is now looking towards Britain and France to step in. And our next story takes a look at this seismic shift that is taking place in European defense as Europe is bracing for the possibility of a diminished American role in Europe's security architecture. Take a look.
The battlefield in Ukraine is shifting. Russia is gaining ground, pressing its advantage with relentless force, while Washington signals a chilling new direction, moving closer to Moscow. As US foreign policy pivots, Europe is left exposed, its decades-long reliance on American nuclear protection now hanging by a thread. Germany sees the writing on the wall. Once shielded under NATO's nuclear umbrella, Berlin now looks to the UK and France to step up. Friedrich Merz, whom polls suggest is on course to become Chancellor, after Sunday's German election says Berlin needs to look beyond the US towards France and UK for nuclear safeguard for years. The US has stationed nuclear warheads in Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy and Turkey under NATO's nuclear sharing agreement. But with political instability in Washington and increasing isolationist rhetoric, European leaders are scrambling for alternatives. But earlier this month, Trump's top team in Warsaw and Munich reinforced these fears, suggesting US troops could be withdrawn from Europe entirely.
What happens 5 or 10 or 15 years from now is part of a larger discussion that reflects the threat level, America's posture, our needs around the globe, but most significantly, the capability of European countries to step up. And that's why our message is so stark to our European allies. Now is the time to invest, because you can't make an assumption that America's presence will last forever.
But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense.
UK PM Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron are rushing to Washington to underscore European anxiety.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell US President Donald Trump, basically, you can't be weak in the face of Russian President Vladimir Putin. It's not you. It's not what you're made of. It's not in your interest. How can you then be credible in the face of China if you're weak in the face of Putin?
The prospect of a European nuclear deterrent presents unprecedented challenges. While Britain and France possess nuclear capabilities, extending this umbrella across Europe raises complex questions of commitment, capability, and control.
All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we have joining us in this broadcast from Berlin, Dr. Sergei Semliny, who's a defense expert and also director at the European Resilience Initiative Center. He's joining us live on this broadcast. Now, Dr. Semliny, this is a statement by an individual who is slated to be possibly the next Chancellor of Germany, who's saying that Germany's reliance on the United States of America to provide a nuclear cover for Europe perhaps is not as solid as what was earlier perceived, and therefore France and the United Kingdom need to step up. Is Europe looking at a possible restructuring of how its security would be conducted from here on?
Yeah, hello, and thank you for having invited me today. Well, it's a tricky question. Theoretically, yes, both the United Kingdom and France have their nuclear weapons, and they have means of delivering warheads on the depths of like intercontinental range. But both countries have never developed their weapons to be an umbrella for other countries. They have a very limited amount of warheads, and their nuclear doctrine does not foresee usage of these weapons to protect other non-nuclear members. Within the NATO, this role was always reserved for the United States, which has still much more nuclear warheads and means of their delivery. So if you look at the both nations, the UK and France, they only can rely for a strategic strike on their nuclear submarines. And they have like only, if I'm not mistaken, only one nuclear submarine each, which can be at the same time in the sea and can launch these nukes. So in the situation of nuclear blackmailing by Russia, when Russia says, if you don't yield, we will strike you so massively, we will just wipe out your nation. Both nations, France and UK, cannot strike Russia on the scale that would eliminate the whole Russian territory. So in that deterrence situation, the level of threatening from Russia towards Europe and from Europe towards Russia is not equal. Russia has much more striking potential. So Russia would definitely try to use this and will at least try to convince France and the UK that if Russia, let me say, attacks Poland or Germany or other non-nuclear nations, then the nuclear nations, France and the UK, will not oppose. That's why the US nuclear shield was so much important for Europe and for NATO all the time, and still is important.
Interesting. Now, looking at how things are shaping up within the United States, where under Donald Trump, the United States has been blowing hot and cold about its commitment towards the NATO military alliance. Germany, I'm pretty sure, will be looking at the example of Ukraine, which in 1994, as a part of the Budapest Memorandum, gave up its nuclear weapons. A carrot of a NATO alliance membership was dangled in front of it, and this is where Ukraine finds itself today. Do you think Germany, considering the manner in which things are unfolding in the geostrategy of Europe, would want to develop nuclear weapons of its own?
Well, that is a million-dollar question. Will new nations develop their nuclear weapons? Shall we? Are they allowed to do so? Because all these nations, they have signed the non-proliferation treaty, and Germany in particular promised not to develop nuclear weapons. Moreover, Germany has promised in the 2+4 treaty of 1991 that no nuclear weapons of other nations will be stationed, for example, in the eastern part of Germany. So the question is, if there is a technical capacity. Yes, there is technical capacity. Germany and other developed nations can develop their nukes. B, if there is a legal option for that. No, not now. To start developing nuclear weapons, you should first cancel quit several international treaties.
Right.
And say we're not a part of non-proliferation treaty, for example. Third, will it have consequences? Will other nations, try to sanction Germany, like Iran was sanctioned or North Korea was sanctioned for attempts to develop the nukes?
Right.
I think it will not be the case because the situation has changed, and one can argue that the situation has changed and old treaties do not act, but it's a very tricky question, of course.
Interesting. We'll have to see as to how things unfold. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Sergei Simleny, for joining us from Berlin with that perspective there.
Thank you so much.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.